intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
So, welcome to Radio Intentional Decision. Right here, right now, I'm sitting in the third broadcast, I guess, this weekend for Radio Intentional Decisions. We are one out of 50 concepts, broadcasting live 24 hours for 4 days. And right now, I have a guest here in the studio, a fantastic woman that I've got to know the last 10 years or something, Tintin Santén. So, Tintin, please tell us a little bit. Who are you, and maybe also why?
Okay. Well, I have to start with saying good morning, Stellan, and thank you for inviting me. Sorry, can you ask the question again? Why I'm here?
Yeah. Who are you, and what is WOW with life?
Okay. Well, I'm how can you say that? I'm working at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and in that role, I'm a head of several platforms that work with collaboration and innovation. So on daily basis, I work with people trying to get complicated questions to get complex answers.
That sounds very interesting, and the reason to why we are here is that we're going to explore this area of interest together, complexity and innovation, and we're going to talk about both intentional decisions as a worldview model, and also about the Kinefin framework that Dave Snowden has developed, and you're actually living those ideas and models in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, I have to.
I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, it's for me, it's a sense-making framework. So it really makes a difference for me when I try to figure out where are we in the discussion that we're having, in the problem we're trying to solve, in the solutions that we might sit on, or knowledge that we might have. And
and very often, I guess, when you have a complex system, we're told to reduce it, to get it simple. So when we reduce a complex system, I believe we also take away the causality.
Yeah, and also the power of several parallel knowledges. They are trapped in separate pipes, and then it's really difficult to both address emerging things and really important things that might be in the very zone of pipes lying next to each other. And when you look at science or the scientific society, they very often go into complicated questions. They put up hypotheses. And in that sense, you do dip into very, very narrow questions, and it's a matter of having a pass or fail. And in doing that, you need to narrow down, and you forget, or you have to avoid, or how do you say that? You have to not look so much at the complex picture, because then you cannot answer your hypotheses.
No, because you don't see the again those we can call it causalities, how things are connected, and that's interesting. And there, of course, we can always reduce systems, but we should know that when we lose complexity, we lose the power of the complexity also. And that's interesting. So how can you just give us some kind of a example, maybe from your day-to-day life, where you see people wanting to deal with the complexity, and then they have, narrowed it down and reduced it to a simple system?
Well, that is if we have a meeting, a collaboration concerning a complex question that might have to do with anything within agricultural sciences. We do have researchers coming into the meetings, and what they contribute with is most of the time analytical answers to one specific question. And it's sometimes hard for them to zoom out and think that they are not just there to contribute with an analytical question, because we are actually working in the complex field. We've sort of left the complicated and went into the complex area. And then it's the way we need to look at something emerging. That can be quite difficult for them, because that's sort of if you're into science, that's usually a field of speculation.
Yeah,
and they dislike speculation.
Yeah, but hypotheses are speculation.
Yeah, but then they work really hard to find an answer, and eventually they will find an answer to their hypotheses. But when you're in sort of collaboration discussion, and even moving into innovation, which would be the chaos field, you deliberately go to the chaos field because you need to think, as we sometimes say, out of the box. That could be quite uncomfortable if you come to the table with one specific answer, and you're sort of forced into discussing it in more of a emerging sense, and then also looking at it as if it could be an innovation that is something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, and you have to deal with the ambiguity, and we have talked this weekend about. I heard Captain Future of Mecacillion talking about this tonight. He had a 5-hour broadcast this night, and he talked about the Fuka model, about how you can deal with and embrace ambiguity as something that is giving you possibilities, instead of being afraid or when fear is raised, then you lose the ability to see patterns in both chaos and complex. So just for you viewers and listeners, if you want to dig in more to those models or whatever we can call them, frameworks, we invite you to Google to Google the Kinefin. It's a Welsh word, and the guy behind that is Dave Snowden. And then I just mentioned Fuka model for dealing with uncertainty and how you can embrace change. Okay, there is a some kind of how should I say it? Some kind of interesting connection between complexity and also how you can look at the world from intentional decision models. So if you want to study that, please do so.
And then also, I'm thinking about the time that we're in at the moment with the coronavirus, and it's like we're in this mix of chaos and simple, and as I see it, that's quite it's a very strong combination, but also quite dangerous when those two meet. And people, if you think about the way we react with our feelings and our thoughts, and we're sort of almost ping-ponged between chaos and simple, or chaos and obvious. It's really hard. It's hard for any working environment at the moment, and in science, it's
and I believe when we have this kind of situations that we have the last weeks or maybe months for some people, this is really put on an edge on how you look at the world and your ability to both navigate and create in it.
Yeah, so it's like usually we move from from working with analysis and moving into the hardship of collaboration. And at the moment where we are in chaos and trying to do best practice every day, and the hardship now is to move into collaboration from the obvious and innovative perspective instead of coming from the analytical perspective. So that's hard for people to do.
Yeah, and maybe that is because we haven't been trained for it. It could be. I mean, when we were born, we were curious by nature, and when we learned to walk, it wasn't like, oh no, I failed 3 times, now I give up. So looking at the world from a child's perspective, or from a child's perception, more or less, people, when I tell that story, some people say, yeah, but then you are naive if you would have such a way of looking at it. But we know that the play and the silliness and stuff like that is actually opening up, and to be playful within innovation, for instance, I guess that is what you have to do to get to get it all going. Or what is your experience of it?
Well, the feeling is that maybe being naive, but it's the thing, when we grow up, we are taught we have to be responsible, and the feeling of maybe not being responsible if we go out of our comfort zone, and we're not sure if it's a responsible thing to do. We get nervous and sometimes angry, and when nervousness and anger meets, it really creates a climate that can set off things that we cannot predict, which in a sense is good.
Yeah.
But then we also have to be prepared that now some things are happening that we cannot prepare for. We cannot react the way we usually do, because whatever is happening is not.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking of here is that a lot of things that are going on in my mind right now, and of course, then if we. You said we should be responsible, but what if the responsibility is to be playful? Yeah, that could be a story of us. And I believe when I have those dialogues with you, Tintin, because we have had many of them during the last 10 years, I think it's quite playful. All those dialogues, they have some kind of a, you never know where they're going, and that is fun in itself. And also, but there is a trust, I would say, in that we're coming to some point, or at least we're having fun on the journey.
And things are not always as dangerous as you think they are whenever you move out of your comfort zone. It's not. It's like they put the comfort zone, and whatever is outside the comfort zone is a danger zone, which is not. It
doesn't say.
It can be a creative zone. It can be an energizing zone. It can be anything.
And what if you can be comfortable with ambiguity, for instance? That would be interesting. So just calling it comfort zone is actually quite a limiting belief in itself.
It is.
Maybe we should get rid of the comfort zone. Maybe we should call it a sofa zone. Or
let's lose it. And in combination with, actually, one of the reasons why I said yes when you called is that I just started a meditation course, and it's led by a Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka. His name is Bante. He is fantastic. And what we're taught in that is the Metta meditation, which is that you really focus on loving yourself. It's about love and kindness. And when you reach the point when you rediscover the love for yourself, in my case, you cannot help yourself starting to love other people. It comes
as a result of that's interesting.
And then he ended the lesson last Friday saying, this week your homework is mainly to help anyone who asks for help.
So it's him I should thank for you saying yes.
Because when you called, I just think,
This reminds me of another story from a colleague of mine, Stefan, who left the big pharma some 10 years ago after 30 years in it, and what he did at that specific point was looking at the movie, watching the movie Yes Man, and so he started to try this out, and it was funny because. It actually took him all the way to Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, And and it's a way of thinking. If you want to call it the play zone, or you just want to tear down the walls around comfort zone and just be in a zone, and then there are so many opportunities to do things and try things that you haven't tried before, but you just think them and then you sort of let go, because it takes a certain amount of energy to do different than what you're used to. So
Yeah, and I think it also leads to opening up, because you can play by yourself. That's possible. Of course, you can always have like bricks of Lego or something that can make you playful, or maybe a ball of some kind, but very soon a lot of people want to play together.
yeah.
What is your experience of playing together within this context that you're in, the innovation context and so on?
Yeah, I usually say 1 + 1 is 3. It always happens something, and sometimes people are worried, well, how is that going to work today when we cannot meet? But I discovered when we have our meetings over digital media like Zoom or something, another kind of presence and focus is there, and 1 + 1 becomes 3 or 4 in that media as well. You don't have to sit around the table. Other things happens when you're on a digital channel. But
I do agree.
Yeah, but then and also maybe because the media is not new, but it's a new way of working focused. People do take leaps, and they say things and do things that they are not used to.
Yeah, that's interesting, and maybe it's the playfulness again when you're. I mean, even if we have had the digital platforms for many years now, and 5-10 years or something, good platforms, and the telephone we've had for 100.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking for here is that a lot of people haven't really dug into it. I don't know how many Zoom or Skype meetings I've had the last weeks where people have their first experience of such a platform, and that is playful in itself. It's funny, and it's a little bit odd, and as you say, you get focused, you get intense in the meeting, and I would say more productive. Also, if we need productivity and efficiency, I don't know. Sometimes we need that, and sometimes it can hinder us.
Yeah. Some people, and I think you should do a mix, because some people, they really loosen up and they can work better if it's a focused meeting. They sort of relax if there's a real straight framework to it, and some people, they really loosen up if there's no framework. So it's a matter of mixing those things in the same hour you have the meeting, but it's possible.
And coming back to what we talked about the Dave Snowden model, Kinefin, it's also that he talks about the heuristic principles, so I call them guiding principles, or dimensions that you need to have, and this can be enablers. So if you have a framework, it's not there to frame you, it's that's there to enable stuff. So having, for instance, some kind of what should I say? We can call it framework again. Not inboxing, more like letting you be creative. So if we have some, not calling them rules, but principles that are guiding us, they can be simple in itself. So, for instance, we are working in the intentional decision model with empathy over sympathy. That means that you put in also the ability not only to feel your sorrows or your pain, and also to be able to take that a couple of steps more. I can put myself in someone else's shoes and feel all feelings from that perspective, and also put myself in my own future shoes, that is a future me. And that is extremely powerful when you come to terms of innovation and looking forward, but from another perception almost.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because an innovation, it might not be an innovation to you, but it might be an innovation to a lot of other people. And to get an understanding of that, you need to get into other people's shoes. You need to see what they see, and you need to feel the benefit that they might have from this thing that you don't see. But that's not the point. It's when you do an innovation, you don't do it for yourself solely. You do it for other people,
including yourself.
It can be, and it doesn't always have to be for yourself. Because that would be very restricting. If I only did innovations that would
benefit
empower
yourself.
me, I would actually lose interest completely. I think.
Yeah. Have you ever tried out a little tool called empathy maps? Have you tried those?
Nope.
No. And then I can introduce you to
Yeah.
an empathy map.
Please do.
Because there are a lot of people that want to take another viewpoint or another stand, and then they ask this people, or it could be a group of people, it could be a market or whatever it is, and you base your analysis on their answers. But then you have to realize, first of all, you have to put out questions. So that's the first thing. The other one, questions then have to be interpreted by this, we can call it a person for a while. And the next problem there is that maybe they don't understand the question, or they don't want really to answer thoroughly, or maybe they don't have the ability because they are not conscious about whatever
Or maybe
it is.
they hear the question they do want to answer.
Yeah, so there are a lot of limiting things on the road to asking someone else about their own opinion. So this is another idea, this empathy map, and that is instead you create a map. You take a drawing, you put that person in the center, and then you ask yourself, if I was this person, then now I am the person, not if I was. So you put yourself in that person's shoes. What do I hear? What do I see? What do I feel? And what do I think? And what are my pains and my gains? So you use empathy for this. We can even limit it to not only a specific person, but to a specific context or situation. For instance, if you're innovating in whatever you do, you put it in the hands of the user, and you can use this empathy map for this user using this innovation in a certain context, whatever it is. And then you ask yourself, okay, what do I think? What do I see? What do I hear? And what do I see? And what are my pains and my gains? And my experience by using this empathy map in many business development cases and so on is that it's extremely powerful. Actually, you get to, you get under the skin or so to speak, for that person you want to know more about, even if you haven't talked to him or her.
Yeah. But if you're, I'm head of a unit, and then every day you have to see and think in that manner to keep your staff working and happy and having the things that they need to be able to work. So that's like the.
So think what you're thinking now.
That's my glasses every day.
Yeah. So think of what you're thinking now, but you do it in a structured way. So you put it on a canvas, more or less, and you can also collaborate on that canvas. So, for instance, you and I can have an empathy map being done together for another perspective or another.
So I can be Stellan for 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can be. Yeah, you can. Yeah, but we can collaborate on it. So, for instance, if we want to see this user using this innovation, for instance, you and me and the rest of the team, we can do this empathy map together. So, in a dialogue, you can actually work through and get under the skin of this person that you want to study, or this group of people, or the market, or whatever you call it.
And then you take your ideas into communities and societies to check what is my map and what's the reality of.
Yeah, but what is the reality then? My experience of using this tool is that you actually get more knowledge than asking people, because you not only get what they are conscious about, you see their unconscious things, and also the subconscious patterns they have, the habits they have that they're not conscious about.
But if I got it right, you start with you imagining that you are someone, you are a
you put yourself
target
in the
person or a group of people.
We can call it target person.
Yeah. So whatever you come up with also will reflect a lot of your thoughts and feelings.
But that's not empathy.
No, but that's inevitable that it's going to start somewhere.
But is that a problem, or is it a possibility?
It is a possibility. So, I just thought that if I did it, I would be quite aware of that is my thoughts, even if they are empathetic and I'm thinking I'm someone else, and I put myself in their position. it would be. I would be very intrigued going out asking that specific.
You don't have
group
to
of
do
people.
either or. You can do both, of course. So what I'm suggesting is an interesting. At first, when I got hold of this little tool, I found it. I don't know where I found it, but at the same time I found it, I also realized that it is part of the course material I was teaching in a business development course. So it was very funny for when I told them, yeah, you can Google it and find the empathy map. Yeah, but it's in the book. So it was actually in the what do you call it, business canvas generation book from Osterwald and his team. So but trying it out was very interesting because I had the same, we can call it doubts that you're putting up now, but I find it very interesting, and of course there is but also when you go out asking people, you also listen to what you want to hear.
Yeah,
so it's not only the respondee that listens to what they want to hear. You also listen to what you want to hear.
Yeah, and if you want to play with something, and if you take for example the example of a child playing, whenever they get hold of something, they will try it out. So we can call it doubt, but I would say you try it, you stretch it, you find
Curiosity.
a pin, you start smashing around with it, you start to poke it into things, you start to maybe even chew on it, or you throw it up in the air, you try
what
to
happens.
what's going to be, what is going to be. So I would like to do that with your empathy map.
Yeah,
if you let
do
me.
that. Google it or find it in the book called Business Canvas Generation. And Business Model Generation, it's the name of the book, I guess. Business Model Generation. I think it was published in 2014 or something. So it's I don't know if that's new or old any longer.
You mean the business model canvas or the book?
Yeah,
both
the book, and that was when it was released. And what I'm thinking of is that when I say that is that sometimes when we look at science, at least me as not being a scientist, but more interested in science, I had a long background in academia, but not any longer. But when I'm saying is that I believe that we always want recent studies. We want it to be fresh on the table, the latest in science. That is better than what was. At least that's the what I hear when I read the papers or watch the news. It doesn't say anything about the knowledge that we presented 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We also know that a lot of the things we discover today are actually throwing other knowledge out of the window. Yeah,
but if you as a scientist, I mean, being a scientist, that's a profession, and when you work as a scientist and you put up your hypothesis, it's always built upon old knowledge. So you very seldom publish something that comes out of nowhere. So and that's knowledge that can be found way back. And of course there are also some knowledges that are not accurate today because we know more, and some of it is not accurate because someone actually made up the results, even if we have a very rigorous system. And those made up results, those alternative results, you could say, because they fitted into something that the scientist wanted. Those are really dangerous because in the scientific society we build every knowledge upon old knowledge. So if that old knowledge is not correct, may it be because we didn't know enough, then that's okay, because as soon as we know more we can do it correctly. But if it's built upon something that was wrong, it can create a
cascade of wrong results.
Or wrong in a scientific way. And within those results there might be true stuff as well. But
so it's hard to tell which is which then.
That's the hard part for a scientist as a profession.
So what I'm also thinking of is that when we do this hypothesis and so on, we very often tend, again, maybe that's not the main purpose of it, but it's very often the outcome of it that we throw those other truths out the window. For instance, when I was a kid, I was told the story that if I lost my brain cells, for instance, drinking alcohol and stuff, I could never get them back. But then we realized that the brain was plastic during what do you call it?
Yeah, the genome. Yeah, the
Yeah,
plasticity of the
plasticity,
genome.
yeah, plasticity of the brain also, and and also the genome. Today we have epigenetics, for instance, and which didn't even exist when I was a kid. So the story was that I was born with a setup, and if I did anything harm to that setup, or for instance. We can take the alcohol example. We were told that when we lose our brain cells, we will never have them back again. Today we know that that's not the truth. We have new brain cells and neurons, created over and over again.
Yeah, but I think sometimes science is so simplified because it's also can be quite harmful and damaging to drink a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
But you always know that whatever we know today.
That was an example, Tim.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I didn't.
But I just mean that whatever we know today, we do know that is just part of the knowledge on the journey of getting to know everything. I don't know if we're ever going to know everything, but what we do know is that what we know today is only a part of what's actually out there to be, if you say, knowable.
And you shouldn't be here to defend science. That was not my or that we should drink alcohol. Sorry.
No.
Misinterpretation of my intent.
I made a joke
Sorry.
of it.
Maybe I made it the misinterpretation myself also. No, but there is an interesting thing here, because I believe scientific method is a fantastic method for finding new knowledge. But at the same time, if we limit it to certain parts of the reality, for instance, the measurable stuff only, then we have a big problem, I guess.
Yeah, we do, because humans are not. We're not robots in any sense. So even if we get to know that at this very day true knowledge concerning something, we do not always act that way, or
that's right.
or very seldom act what we think of today as the truth. So humans are very complex, and if you don't take that into account, you just say that now science knows this, and you think that's gonna shape the whole society. Then you're out of.
Yeah, and at the same time, we see those tendencies all the time. We have these complex systems. We call them life, organizations, businesses, whatever it is, society, and. Very often I find them reduced into not only the obvious that is now denominated in the Kinefin, but that really to what it was denominated when Dave Snowden created it. It's the simple. You want something to be simple and a simple truth is also an easy truth to take in and accept, and you don't have to put in energy in understanding. And maybe we can't understand. We can't understand the complex. Can we?
It's quite hard to always be within chaos or complexity. So sometimes we take things to the obvious or simple level, and we do an analysis on it because that's pretty straightforward and it's easy to follow. But when we get into real life and how we interpret things and how we work with whatever we know, we are almost always in the complex and chaotic world in our heads and in our feelings. And so it's difficult. I would just like to open up that it's okay to be in the complex and chaotic field.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have to create emotions that you're in the wrong place.
No.
Just because someone else is pointing on the obvious or the complicated stuff. You can always bring it to the complex or chaotic.
What you also bring then is the power of it, as we started out this dialogue with the power of complexity.
Yeah.
When you have a broader causality. And I'm also thinking of a term called chaotic. It's in between chaos and order. So when you have a complex system, it can turn into a chaotic system. Very often, I would say, based on fears, because they limiting our perspectives, and they limit our ability to to grasp and understand and embrace ambiguity, for instance. And if we can keep calm and breathe in, breathe out, and so on in such situations, I think we can bring order to chaos.
Yeah, if you can focus on it, it's absolutely, there's lots of power in it. And if you want to reach the being connected and amplifying each other's knowledges and thoughts and feelings, then definitely that's the place to be. It's as if when you go into the obvious or simple, you connect things, but you don't amplify.
Yeah, that's good. I really like that. Yeah, you connect things, but you don't amplify them. That's interesting. So you see patterns, but you don't. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Interesting. Maybe we should round off with going back to ideas of collaboration. I would I would like to explore and elaborate a little bit more about how can we collaborate and what is happening when we're collaborating, and what connected to what we have been talking about. How does that relate to?
Well, I wanted to put it also when you talked about the empathy map, because if you're ahead of a meeting, for example, and you try to put yourself in other people's heads or thoughts or feelings or needs, because in a meeting when people come and they really want to solve a complex question, they bring in what they want to bring in, and they sometimes stop listening to other people because they are so eager to share what they have. And then trying to keep that together to become something collaborative, it takes a lot of I can't find the word, tillåtande.
Okay.
Permission.
Yeah, we have to have a trust, maybe.
Yeah, trust and permission in the room, and then to do it without setting
openness,
too many frames. Just
allowance.
Yeah, because people come into the same question from so many different perspectives, and they might be standing for other people far away from the question, so then they don't understand what they're saying. And themselves, they think that they are really, really close to it. So it's really important in a collaborative meeting to get the people to realize that they are sharing the same problem. They are coming from very different perspectives. They might be close or they might be far away from the solution, but they need to see each other and listen to each other, because otherwise they will not create something together.
Yeah,
they would just add in their own stuff.
Yeah, and
then 1 + 1 never becomes 3. Then it's just a 1 and 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 a 1, and it doesn't.
Competition is 1 + 1 = maximum 1.
Yeah.
So if you only want to compete, I can see it as if I interpret what you say in terms of competition, is you go into the room and the only truth you want to explore is your own. You're actually amplifying yourself.
Yeah, or everyone is so eager to say what they've been thinking about, what they have found, that it's really hard to get them to listen. Usually I say when I feel that someone is not listening, they don't feel that they are heard. So in a collaborative meeting, you have to make sure that everyone who speaks their mind, you need to explore what they're saying and what is almost emerging from what they're saying, and then you move into another person or two people, so that you try to make sure that everyone is listening. Because when everyone feels heard and my perspective has been seen, it's been up on the table and it's been twisted and turned, you might, or you will be more eager to build something together. But if you don't want to build on anybody else's case unless you really feel that this person has heard what I've said, they've thought it over, and they've given me a question back. So whenever it's really tough, you ask someone who has just had their perspective told. You ask all the people in the room to ask that person a question, adding to whatever that person said. That's a way of sort of modeling. You add in.
Definitely.
You sort of explore a place, a room, Because
context and
otherwise
situation.
they are going to be in separate rooms. They might be in the same building in their heads, but they're going to be in separate rooms, and they're going to shut the door to someone that they thought had a silly solution.
Mm.
Not even, and the person having the silly solution doesn't even know why A thinks it's a silly solution. So that's why they need to ask questions to each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really interesting. And I believe when we meet, for instance, if you and I sit down here, we elaborate on something. We have to have a lot of trust to do that. I mean, we haven't even spoken about before, but we were really supposed to talk about, and that's a lot of trust, of course. But what if and this is also based on experience. If we would have put in a third person around this table, it's almost that it's created a new. It's not only three consciousness in the room. Then it's like something else is also created.
Yeah.
So very often in those dialogue, we really work hard to be more than two in a dialogue. So we are 3 or 4, and what happens then is that, as you understand, when we sit down, first of all, the audience wants to know who is Tintin. So I ask questions, and then I'm in an interview position, more or less. I'm asking you obvious questions.
Yeah.
And you get obvious answers, maybe to obvious questions. Even if I would say, what is making you tick? You very often as person we go into what the habits of explaining, which means I tell the story where I am working, and what position I have, and so on. So we lose a lot of knowledge in that situation, being two, because we're so bound to the interview. Dialogue and more conversation. But when we move into a dialogue and we are more in the room, if we had been a third person here, that person would be an X factor for us, you and me.
Yeah, they would. And the fun thing in a meeting, that is to ask the question, if you look at me, what would you like to tell me?
Well,
and then it comes.
Another thing also, when you sit down in a meeting, which is quite interesting, is to leave what you have to leave to get into the meeting. We're often using check-ins and stuff like that to get the presence. And we were talking about in the beginning of this program about how those digital platforms right now due to the virus, we can blame the virus, but we can also embrace it and say thanks, thanks to it, because people get more present. But that is actually because they are checking into the meeting. They are present in the meeting. They're present in the collaboration. They're present in the process of innovation or whatever it is. But you can bring that also into the room by a check-in or by a joint. What do you need?
Well, we actually double up. We do check-in even if we do digital channels.
Yeah, I like that, and also maybe asking the question, what do you need to be able to be present in this meeting?
Yeah.
Or I need to turn off my phone. Okay, do so. Or I need to get a call take a call with my kids, and or I need to sort out this issue before I can.
Yeah.
Of course, it was maybe not what we were supposed to do, but we were able to be present at least, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and you can have a lot of fun also in those digital meetings. If you are the host, for example, in Zoom, you can mute everyone.
That is funny.
I found that very fun. And that's just, I mean, you have to do it with, of course, a lot of love. But people enjoyed it. They thought it was quite fun. Also, if you're a team that know each other, you always know there's someone who's going to talk for a longer time than others, and someone needs more thinking. So he's going to talk at the very end of the meeting. And
not only can you mute them, you can mute them for good. Also, you can throw them out.
You can throw them out.
Yeah, but there is also that's good if you're hosting it. Yeah. You can mute, and you can be the only one that can unmute.
Yeah,
so there's another setting for that.
Yeah, and you can put them into rooms. You can separate them. So as soon as you feel that these two needs to talk more, they're taking the Zoom time. So just put them in a separate room. But of course, you have to do all of that with love, and also you have to do it with the purpose of connecting and amplifying. Not because it irritates you or.
Yeah. So you have the right purpose behind it. And when you talk about love, I really like this, because we had radio intentional decision dialogue this summer in it's something called Almedalen in Sweden. For you are listening from other countries, it's a arena where everyone meets that want to create a future together. And I had a fantastic dialogue with people also working within the innovation networks. It was 3 of them at the same time. And one of them, he was really much into talking about love for creating innovation.
Yeah.
He worked at Synoleap, powered by ABB. It's a hub for small businesses and startups that is hosted by ABB, the big company. And so they're sharing the same space as the employees of the ABB. So there are 50 startups in this environment.
Wow.
And he said, the main factor for everything, all the collaboration, all the innovation, and all the working in the same space was based on love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a matter of also, if you are the receiver of someone's love in that sense, it's a way of feeling that someone believes in you. And sometimes that is enough for you to take the leap into something that scares you.
Yeah, that's right. So something Tintin to end this dialogue with, some thoughts you have, an insight you want to share, or something you maybe we haven't touched upon that you want to say before we say thanks for now and welcome back and stuff like that. Anything in your mind or in your heart that wants to come out?
Yeah, I was actually looking into your book, Stellan, when I came this morning. And there's a proverb saying, the time is always right to do right, by Martin Luther King. And I really love that one, and especially in the time that we're in at the moment, where many people are scared, and we try to figure out who's doing right, who's doing wrong. There's always a time to do the right thing. So instead of figuring out who did right, who did wrong, just try to do as best as you can.
And I would say that that proverb will end this show. So if we have it once more.
The time is always right to do right, by Martin Luther King.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Tintin, for coming here today. And thank you all your listeners and viewers. And please visit the website bestfolder.world, and you find the schedule for the upcoming sessions here we have, and the concepts, another 1.5 day with broadcasting Best for the World. Welcome back.